Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Gloria Bashir, and on behalf of Masjid Al Taqwa, Resident Imam Tariq El Amin, and the Talim Committee that includes myself, Dr. Lionel Allen, and a committee chaired by Dr. Aisha El Amin, I greet you with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum. So, we've got a really, really interesting and exciting Talim presentation today. And so we're going to start our Talim by opening with our opening prayer. And I will first say it in Arabic and then in English. With the name of God, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, Sirata al-ladhina an'amta alayhim, ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. The English translation is with Allah's name, merciful benefactor, merciful redeemer. Praise be to God, Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds, the merciful benefactor, merciful redeemer, master of the day of judgment. Thee do we worship, and thine aid we seek. Show us the straight way, the way of those on whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, those whose portion is not wrath, and who go not astray. Amen. So greetings, everyone. So we have just an extraordinarily dynamic presentation today. And we're going to be graced with the presence of the newly minted Honorable Judge Deidre M. Dyer. Judge Dyer is, of course, newly appointed. She's a newly appointed justice for the Cook County Circuit Court. And she is absolutely a legal expert on various topics that include financial fraud, complex financial crimes, financial fraud schemes, insurance fraud, real estate fraud, and mortgage fraud, just to name a few. She was an assistant state's attorney and the supervisor of public corruption, financial crimes, money laundering, and consumer fraud. And that is just, again, the tip of the iceberg of her bio. So please allow me to give the floor to Judge Dyer as she shares with us her journey to the bench. And I will allow plenty time for questions. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Judge Dyer. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gloria Bashir, for the invitation today, and Rod Bashir and everyone on the call this morning. It's such an honor to be here and speak with you today. As Dr. Bashir just said, I am a recent addition to the bench in Cook County. We're fortunate enough in our state to have no less than 5 women sitting on our Supreme Court. And right now we have 2 women of color, only one from our region, Justice Joy V. Cunningham. And I am proud and honored to say that I was selected by Justice Joy Cunningham as her first judicial appointment. And so I am appointed as a full circuit judge in Cook County, currently serving in the traffic division at the Daly Center. And looking forward to whatever assignments I have from that point on. But as Dr. Bashir said, I had quite a journey to get there. And I will point out that I am from very humble beginnings. I'm a lifelong Southsider and resident of the Southland. I grew up around 98th in Cottage Grove, right down the street from the old Jay's Potato Chip Factory that a lot of you all may have seen off of the expressway. I grew up in that neighborhood and later moved to the south suburbs and was fortunate enough to meet the Bashirs at some point along the way of my journey. But I am a product of Chicago Public Schools, a proud product of Chicago Public Schools. Kenwood Academy is where I went, and I attended college downstate at Illinois Wesleyan University. And it was there that I had an extraordinary opportunity while studying at Illinois Wesleyan University. I had the opportunity to study abroad in Europe, in France, which was extraordinary. And if you've never been to France, I would recommend that every person of color at some point in their life should go to France to see just what a difference it is in how you're treated as a person of color. I learned about France early on. A lot of us know about Josephine Baker, and many of our artists and writers back in the day all had stints in Paris, and they talked about how wonderfully Black people were treated. And I wanted to see for myself at some point. And I studied in college, and the first program I applied to, I was not accepted in. But it was because I had mentors and good people to support me that I was encouraged to try again. And don't you know, when God closes a door, he opens a window, because I was actually accepted into a program that was much better than the first program that rejected me. And so I was able to study at the Sorbonne in Paris, which is one of the best universities in the world. And that was just truly an eye-opening experience for me. And I came back to this country and started law school after having had this wonderful experience of being treated as a whole person and not just a person of color in France. I came back to Chicago. As we know, it's a segregated city. And my first year of law school, I was the only Black student in my first year law section. So that was a real wake-up call. It was a startling juxtaposition to go from being celebrated as a woman of color to being the only person of color in your law school class. People were not quick to invite me to their study groups or help me. And so it was very difficult and challenging. But I decided at that point that I wanted to use my skills and learn the law to help make my home a better place instead of trying to run away and go back to Paris. And so I studied the law. I've always been an advocate for fairness, and injustice has always bothered me. And so I chose to use my skills as a lawyer to serve the public sector, because I felt that the public was just as deserving of high quality lawyers as millionaires and everyone else. We all deserve the best legal representation possible. And so I went into spaces where Black lawyers were not normally seen. Many of us as people of color growing up see the injustice of law enforcement, and rather than just fighting against that, I wanted to work in the system to be the one to decide what charges were brought, rather than arguing about whether they were proper or not. And so I brought all of my experiences as a Southsider, as a person from humble beginnings, to the prosecutor's office, and it really informed my decisions. I would like to think that I acted in a way that was full of grace, with understanding towards people. I have a brother, so I know I've seen young men, Black men grow up in the city, and there but for the grace of God goes my brother. And I know it's very easy to find yourself caught up in the court system. And we need good people in the court system who understand that, who understand the perspective of it, and who can act accordingly and justly. And I would like to point out that my legal experience not only took me to the prosecutor's office, but I have a significant amount of experience in civil court as well. You're going to find that a lot of people that want to become judges nowadays really only have one area of expertise, and they want to become judges, but they're secretly hoping they don't get sent here or sent there. They only want to be a judge in this type of courtroom. Well, I'm very proud to say that the experience that I've gathered over the years allows me to work in a civil or a criminal courtroom, and I'm just as comfortable in either one. And so I'm unafraid to go anywhere that the chief judge sees fit to send me in the county, and I'm prepared to hit the ground running and do a competent job in both civil and criminal court proceedings. It's also important that I think you want your judges to be able to get things right the first time and have a good perspective on that. And I'm very proud to say that I have not lost a jury trial since 2000. And I've never been overturned on appeal on any case that I've been the lead prosecutor on since 2008. And that's important. You'll find that many lawyers cannot boast that kind of record. It shows that I think about a whole case from start to finish and in the future, and have an eye on all of those different parts. It's important for a jurist to have that ability. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. I've been very excited since I've started as a judge in traffic court. I've noticed that even though all sorts of people come through traffic court, for the longest time, there weren't a lot of people that looked like me on the bench representing folks in traffic court. And I hope that my presence there has allowed for some measure of equity or some sense of fairness. When people come to the court, they at least see that, someone that looks like me is there. So maybe I do have a chance. And it gives people more confidence in the system that serves them. So I'm very proud to be a part of that. And as Dr. Bashir mentioned, I was appointed to this seat, but I'm going to have to run to keep it in 2024. And so I hope to demonstrate to all of you that I'm not only qualified, as has been indicated by all of the major bar associations in Chicago and Illinois, that I'm worthy of the spot. And I hope to personally demonstrate to all of you that I will be an excellent judge for everyone in Cook County. And I thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Well, with all of that, Judge Dyer, I do, first of all, so let me just give some context and background. So Judge Dyer is actually my neighbor and friend. And so we've known her for several years. We've known her to be extraordinarily competent and equitable in her presentation, as well as in her character. And so we're very, very pleased that you're able to join us and share your journey to the bench. We do have a couple of young people on. Hopefully they'll have some questions as well. Some of our college students, some of our more seasoned members of our community who might have some questions as well. But I'd like to ask a little bit about, and certainly, we're going to take whatever questions. Let me just check the chat here. Just a congratulations to you. But we want to be able to talk a little bit more about your criminal and civil trial experience in terms of, what kind of people are presenting to the courts. When I say what kind of people, I should say, we oftentimes get the impression that that the defendants are often people of color, Black and brown. And so give me a little background about the demographic of some of the defendants who've presented in your court.
Well, I can say that I worked in an area with respect to criminal prosecutions called the Special Prosecutions Bureau. Okay, and that pretty much encompasses everything that's not a murder or a rape case, if you will, which is, I don't know if you've ever read the Illinois Criminal Code. It's about as thick as a dictionary. So there are a lot of crimes that people don't think of that often fall under the Special Prosecutions Bureau. And for that reason, I would say that many of the defendants charged in that bureau are more diverse than the typical sector. I would say many of our Black and brown people are caught up on the gun violence and caught up in those charges. But when it comes to thefts and fraud, it seems to be across the board, all races, all ages, fortunately or unfortunately. And I'll tell you, one of the bigger cases that I handle are cases involving seniors. Seniors are very near and dear to my heart. I was raised by my grandparents pretty much on 68th and Calumet, and I now help care for my mother. And so it really bothers me when I see people who have worked so hard for their life savings to have it taken away by someone in just an instant. And if there's any advice I could give anyone on the call right now, it would be take care of the seniors in your life and look after the seniors in your life, because if we're not looking after them, someone else will come in and look after them, and they will not necessarily have their best interests at heart. And so I've handled a number of cases, unfortunately, where seniors have been victimized, including a case where a caregiver simply rolled the victim to a hospital and left her in a waiting room and went back to her home and put her name on the door and changed the locks. It was really egregious. And so those kinds of cases have been really satisfying. But I've also worked on larger cases during the mortgage fraud crisis. I really worked hard to do a policy shift in our office that went away from prosecuting the buyers of those properties, because they were often left holding the bag with a bad mortgage and bad credit. And it was really those mortgage lenders who submitted false documents on their behalf that those buyers didn't know about. that caused a large part of the mortgage crisis. So I'm happy to say that I've prosecuted, wrong, fraudulent appraisers, loan originators, and mortgage brokers who persisted in that problem. So it's really been a pleasure as a prosecutor to use my abilities to kind of go deeper, to get to the ringleaders of things. I'll say a lot of us know about Section 8 in our community, right? And there's a lot of Section 8 fraud, but usually that fraud benefits unscrupulous businesses in our neighborhoods that aren't really serving our citizens fresh groceries or providing the service they claim. They're really just there taking the Section 8 benefits of that neighborhood and are acting as a hub for criminal activity. I'm very proud that I've been able to work on a number of cases that have shut those businesses down in struggling neighborhoods. I've worked to seize tens of millions of dollars from criminal organizations that we've been able to put back into the community with good programs instead. So I learned early on in my legal career that you really have to work with money to get to where the money is, and follow the money to really get to the root of some of the problems in our communities. And the fact of the matter is, in some of our struggling communities, there are people making millions of dollars every day in those communities, and they're not benefiting us. And so we need to root out those unscrupulous businesses that are not there serving the people that they purport to serve, and open the door and make the way for legitimate business to work in our areas. So
Yeah, that's I'm particularly taken by the fact that the Section 8 and those unscrupulous businesses are taking advantage of Section 8 communities, or and that may sound a little too global, but yeah, there are some areas where that are very, very that have a large, significant percentage of Section 8 residents. I do have a family member, this is kind of near and dear to me, who's in Section 8 and who, he receives benefits from the state. He has a link card and such. And this is a company, a business that it's a small grocery store that sells liquor. And, and he's using, my family member is using his link card, and they're accepting it to purchase liquor. And, I just can't prove it. I know that that's what's happening, but, and I'm sure that's one of the things that you're speaking of with these unscrupulous businesses.
Yes.
And how they're definitely reaping the benefits of taxpayers' monies, to flourish their business, but they're ill used.
That's correct. That's exactly correct. I did see in the chat somebody asked what school rejected me. It was like American University in their office in France. It wasn't even a French university. So it worked out. I think I definitely lucked out and got the better deal.
Yeah.
So
yes.
It worked out for the best.
Well, speaking of French, so I understand you are fluent in French.
Yes, I am fluent in French. And but I have a thing about languages. I really enjoy them. And that my time in France really informed me, even as a judge today. I've always had a real soft spot for people who don't speak English as their first language, who have to come through court, because I know how difficult it is to function day to day in a space where people will not speak the language that you're most comfortable with. And I remember how gratifying and helpful it was just to have someone say hello in English when I was really struggling early on with my French. And so I've taken it upon myself. I know a little bit of Portuguese, and I'm trying to teach myself Spanish. It's turning into sort of a Sportuguese instead, but I'm at least functional enough now in court. If I see someone who's Spanish speaking, I can engage them in Spanish and ask them if they need an interpreter and tell them to hold on. My Polish is not as good, but I can cobble through it if somebody's Polish speaking. And ultimately, it's my goal to be able to do that in at least 5 or 6 languages. And it really makes a difference when people come into my courtroom and they're not speaking English, and they see that I recognize that and really recognize their humanity in the language they're most comfortable with. And it really sets the tone for the rest of their experience in court. So
beautiful, beautiful. We hope that you add Arabic to.
Oh, yes. I
that
certainly
language.
will.
Yes, absolutely. So I'd like to go back a little bit because I know this story personally about you, how you left France and how that came about.
Oh, yes. So I love France.
Well, let's
it was
start
just,
with
yes,
how you had decided that you were never coming back.
I was never coming back. I loved it. I called my family and I informed them that they could mail me my diploma. I loved everyone, but I lived in France now. Uh, a few weeks later, there was a knock on my dorm room door, and I opened the door, and it was my mother standing there. And she physically returned me to this country like a runaway fugitive. I say she returned me like a U.S. Marshal. I tried to show her how much fun it was. She spent New Year's with me in Paris. We had a great time. We still laugh about that. But the next day she was like, that's nice, but you got to come home. And so I reluctantly came home. But again, it worked out for the best because I don't know how it happened. But when I got accepted into law school and I was accepted into DePaul Law School, I got to tell my mom on the Oprah Winfrey show that I was accepted into law school, which is amazing. I don't, it's because she brought me back at that time, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I got to tell her on a Mother's Day show. And so I've always felt like I'm a little bit blessed. I know I'm destined for greatness because Oprah said my name at some point.
So, Dr. Bashir, may I ask a question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Deidre, my Polish is a little rusty, but yashimash.
Dzień dobry.
When the average citizen are looking at events that take place in the news, we generally look at those events in terms of whatever our moral compass would be. But when your moral compass runs up against the law, how does someone like you manage a situation like that where it's wrong, but the law says something else that mandates that you may take a certain position? How do you deal with situations like that?
I think that's where it's important to be an exceptional lawyer, right? A good lawyer may not know how to handle that situation, but a great lawyer who has a real understanding of the law and the nuances of the law may see room for things where other people may not. And while there are some limits to what I can do as a judge, and obviously I can't declare what my position would be on anything yet, not having heard it, because that wouldn't demonstrate my fairness. I can say that I've rarely had an issue in that realm, and I credit it to my understanding of the intricate nuances of the law, and I have the ability to do things and see a way where others may not, if that makes sense.
It does. Just one.
I can give you as an example, a lot of people say somebody who's been prosecuted with a crime, there's nothing that can be done with that. I'm aware of so many diversion programs that exist now that didn't exist 10 years ago, not just for veterans or people with drug problems, but people with mental issues. Second chance probation, when it first came out, many people were not aware of it. And that's a great way to allow people a second chance at life, while recognizing that what they did was wrong, but giving them a pathway to redemption. So it's understanding these nuances and different avenues that you have available to you, these different tools in your kit as a lawyer and as a judge that allow us to achieve the best result for somebody coming into the court.
How do you access those particular programs? They're not advertised as I don't guess, and many of us just don't know that there are probably programs for many of the situations that we're in. Mm-hmm. How do we? How would you or the individuals in the legal profession mm-hmm. advertise or promote or educate us on what these programs are prior to having to need those programs?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I think part of it, not to be selfish, is by having people like me in that position as a judge, right? Part of my job is to be a good steward of the law and to explain civics and the law to the public so that they understand what their courts can and can't do. I'm coming into a judiciary that is working to get caught up with the 21st century, right? The pandemic has kind of forced that into high gear. But the truth of the matter is, before the pandemic, if you got put on probation, I was filling out triplicate Xerox paper, that's to put people on probation. And we're just now at a point where things are being computerized and maybe we're increasing access. So certainly in my role as a judge, that would be something that I would be advocating for, is that we increase citizens' access to the information that is available for the court so that they have that information ahead of time. And it could save a lot of time on the back end if people know what options are available to them and what their alternatives might be once they find themselves needing to go to court for any reason. A great example, I bet a lot of people don't know there's an Elder Justice Law Center in the basement of the Daly Center that helps elderly people who have to file paperwork in court proceedings. They help them navigate all of that. And we need to do more to make sure that our citizens are aware of these programs. And it's not that hard. And I would like to work with our judiciary to make sure that everybody knows our court system like the back of their hand, because we really have one of the better ones in the country. When you look at how things are working with some other people. Cook County is the largest unified court system in the country. Because in New York, you have boroughs, and you have other districts in California. So Cook County is the largest unified system.
Thank you.
There are a couple of questions in the chat, one being from Imam Tariq. And the ask is, well, first of all, he thanks you for being here. But the ask is, can you explain the latitude or lack thereof judges have in arriving at a ruling?
Well, it's all governed by statute generally. I will say it's different for criminal and civil, right? In criminal law, depending on the class of the offense, there may not be any wiggle room in terms of sentence. For example, if you're charged and found guilty of a Class X felony, it's a mandatory minimum of 6 years. And I know there's been some school of thought and some people are advocating to move away from those mandatory minimum sentences just to give judges the opportunity to put a little more grace in their sentences for some of these higher offenses. Right now, if somebody committed a Class X offense and it was felt that a term less than 6 years was appropriate, the charge would have to be amended to something other than a Class X felony, which is the prerogative of the prosecutor and not the judge. So
what would be an example of a Class X felony?
Oh, people are surprised. Stealing over $100,000 in government funds is a Class X felony. Okay. If you're the ringleader of a organized financial crimes enterprise, so like all of the people that were smashing and grabbing, the stores downtown, if you were the ringleader of 3 or more of those, that's a Class X felony. And for any amount of money, just 3 or more felony transactions. So things like that, outside of government funds, theft over $500,000 puts you in that Class X territory. But it's not that hard to get there when you're stealing. So people don't realize, they get comfortable, it's easy to steal, and next thing you know, they've stolen $250,000 from the government, and it's a serious matter.
Yeah. We have another couple comments in the chat from Dr. Aisha El-Amin. NPR just did a news story on the Second Chance program that showed how the judicial system has not held up its end of the bargain. And the question is, have you found spaces where you need to push the systems and programs that are in place so that they are more just?
Yes, and I think with respect to that second chance probation, that's an issue of technology again. So when somebody pleads guilty or pleads on a second chance probation, they're essentially pleading guilty, but the court is agreeing to hold their conviction until they've completed the terms of the probation. And if they're successful, it will be erased. I don't know that the clerk system was capable of documenting an agreement like that, if you understand. They could document that the conviction was entered, but they don't really have a space for this sort of conviction not yet entered, but somebody's pled guilty. And I suspect that that's where a lot of the difficulty comes, because the computer record is showing a conviction or a felony conviction, but it shouldn't have been, it's really been held. And there was no place for all these orders that were held. Additionally, it's an education issue, because I don't think a lot of defense attorneys realize that in order to vacate that on the back end, a motion is required on their part. You're pleading guilty, and once you complete your terms, a defense attorney is supposed to request that all of that be vacated at that point, and many do not. Some of the better lawyers do it at the time of plea and just continue it, but many don't. So I think the biggest issue in that problem is one of education and propping up the technological infrastructure that keeps track of these cases.
Mm-hmm. There's another question in the chat. Is felony classification at the state or federal level?
It could be at either. It depends on who you were charged by. Certainly the federal courts have felony charges, and the states as well. I, as judge in Cook County, would be handling only state charges. Okay.
There's also a link to the article regarding the question that Dr. Aisha posed, and regarding the felony record, stories about Cook County felony records. Okay, I have a question about expungement, and how does one begin to pursue that if they're seeking expungement?
There are a number of expungement seminars at any given time all throughout Cook County. People can visit any number of bar associations for information on that, such as the Chicago Bar Association or the Cook County Bar Association, which is the oldest national bar association of Black attorneys in the country. There's a wealth of information on the Bar Association websites in terms of finding a lawyer for whatever particular area you may need, expungement seminars. You can also contact some of the other legal aid organizations like Chicago Volunteer Legal Services to find out when the next expungement seminar is, or you can request that one be done either through the state's attorney's office or the Cook County Clerk of the Circuit Court, Iris Martinez. She's very big on bringing accessibility for expungements to the community, or hosting people to come down to the Daily Center and find out. And she's got a call center now that people can call in to find out information. So the information is there, and I would recommend starting with the bar associations to find out when the next one is. And I will certainly, as I hear about them, pass them on to you as well, Dr. Bashir, so you can share it with your congregation.
Thank you. We have a question from Aisha Muhammad Al-Amin.
Hello. Congratulations, Dr. Dyer, again on your new appointed position. I think the courts have brought someone aboard who has a passion and commitment for treating people fair and right. I work in Cook County Drug Court Program at 26 in California. I have 6 districts that I work under for people. And when you talk about second chances for people who may have a felony, but can still agree to probation for 2 years of addiction treatment. And with that 2 years of addiction treatment, guess what? Their record is expunged. There is, and I don't know how do people get information about all these different programs within the criminal justice system. I just happen to know about this one because I work with this one, but I think there should be a way that, we can start getting information out to people who know how to be able to get information to help them with second chances, so that this charge don't stay on the record for the rest of their life. We just did a graduation with Chief Tim Evans and a 26 in California Judge Burns, for people who had successfully completed that program. And it was so excellent to see how they were able to change their life. And they knew about that program through TAS, Treatment Alternative for Safer Communities. And everyone doesn't happen to know that. but it's good to know that, that we have these programs in place to help people to be able to take a different route and a path for their life.
No, I agree. And I think part of it is, as I said, now that I'm in this position, I fully intend to use my position to take this information that I'm hearing from the public. And this is not the first group that has told me about access to information. And I was just with Tim Evans earlier today, and Justice P. Scott Neville and Justice Cunningham. So when I have these interactions with these people who are in charge of these, I intend to make it known that, there's a real discussion out here in the public that I'm hearing from about access to these programs. And I just kind of peeked at the Cook County Circuit Court's website. There's some information on diversion courts and specialty courts, but it's kind of buried in there. And so maybe it's a question of making that information more prominent on the website so that that people can find it more easily. It's kind of out there, but you really have to look a little bit to find it, I think. So
yeah, accessibility always. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so you do have to. The National Association of Drug Courts has a website that we're supposed to be able to retrieve all the information, but you have to be knowledgeable how to even navigate through it.
Yeah, I have another question, Dr. Bashir, if no one is ahead of me.
No, go ahead.
Deidre, I've always been bothered by the court system in cases where you are assigned a public defender, and public defenders, the way I see the system, have become masters of plea bargaining as opposed to masters of representing people in cases where they're innocent. But in order to get through the case, they end up plea bargaining. Innocent people end up with time or fines or what have you that they're not, that they shouldn't have. How can you as a judge hold public defenders accountable when you see that someone who is before you is perhaps innocent of a charge, but there's a plea bargain that's before you?
I can tell you, and I have seen it before myself, there is a very long series of admonishments when the court takes a plea agreement from somebody. It's not as if they just stamp a piece of paper and nobody has a discussion with that defendant. And part of that plea is that the defendant has to be asked point blank and seriously, have you been coerced to take this plea, or has anyone made any threats or promises against you in exchange for this plea? Occasionally, it doesn't happen all the time. There have been times where people say, I'm innocent. I'm just taking this because the lawyer is telling me to. And every judge I've seen, without exception, when they hear that, immediately stops the plea. Okay, we can't go forward with it once that's been said, or once that becomes apparent, or it becomes apparent that the defendant did not have the mental capacity to enter into the plea at that time. And that's another issue, not just innocence. There are a lot of people with mental health issues in our court system, and those need to be recognized early on, and we don't need to turn a blind eye to it and act like it's not there just to push people through the system. If they're there, that needs to be addressed first and foremost. So my answer to that would be, I can tell you, certainly as a judge in my position, if I see that a person is coerced into making that plea or does not want to, I'm not going to accept it. And it will have to be continued until another day, either to set it for trial or maybe to have a discussion with the lawyer so that everybody is of one accord when the plea eventually goes through. Sometimes it's a question of misunderstanding about what they're agreeing to. Sometimes they really do feel that they've been pushed. And I can say I've witnessed it several times through my career. Whenever that happens, a judge immediately stops and will not go forward with the plea.
Thank you, Judge.
Excellent.
Rod, I want to touch on that with Judge Dyer, that when she stops the trial based on the question being asked, were you coerced into taking this plea? Sometimes the defendants, the public defenders will tell the defendants that we can't beat this case. If we go to trial, you may get 10 years, but if we plea, you may get 5. And I think a lot of the public defenders take that path and that route, and a lot of detainees don't want a public defender because they don't feel like they're advocating, they fight in their behalf. But some of our public defenders are very excellent public defenders and will go to bet for a client. But when the lawyer tells them that, if we go to trial, you can get 10, but if you take this, you can get 2.5. A lot of detainees would just rather take 2.5 than try to fight a case that when they're looking at 10 years.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes.
Alaikum salam.
Judge Dyer, I'd like to ask you a question. I have a concern based upon some of the information you gave us upon becoming a judge, that many lawyers who become judges may not be familiar in an area of law that they have now become judges. I can see you're not in traffic court and you're probably more qualified to be in other areas. But I just was not aware that a person that would be put in that position then would be put on the court in an area of law that they're not familiar with. Now, the other concern I have with that is that we elect our judges. And I have a problem every time that goes around. And I don't recall there's a process when the judges are running for those offices. I think there's possibly even a regulation, but you don't hear about their qualifications, their background. Even when you were appointed judge, was there any hearing process or did they just look at your background?
Oh, no, I've been through an extensive vetting process, actually, because I started this seeking what's called an associate judge vacancy. So there's different types of judges. There's associate judges, we'll call those baby judges, because those aren't elected judges. Those are chosen by the elected judges. Okay, and so you have to get yourself known among the elected judges, and they choose you for associate judge. Then you have your sub-circuit and circuit court judges. Those are the ones that you elect. And those are more powerful. There's a lot that comes with being a circuit judge. As I said, I can vote on what associate judges are judges. I can vote whether those associate judges stay. I can be a supervising judge. I could not necessarily do that as an associate judge. And I could seek to be a presiding judge over an entire department. So there's a lot of power and responsibility that comes with a circuit judge position. So I started this out looking to be an associate judge. And Rod and Gloria could tell you, I've been trying for a few years on that. You put your application in, you get rated by the bar associations. It's a lot of interviewing process. But generally, to answer your question, the only requirement in Illinois to be a judge is that you're a licensed lawyer, okay? That's the only requirement. They don't say where, they don't say what kind of law you have to practice, just that you're a licensed lawyer in good standing. Now, the bar associations won't rate you as qualified unless you have at least 12 years of experience. So those are the only two requirements, really, that there are out there. And so we have more elected judges than not. So it's really incumbent upon us as citizens to kind of pay attention to who these judges are and who they're pushing forward, and make sure that they have the credentials and the ability to serve us to the best ability possible, right? Once you become a judge, you serve at the pleasure of the chief judge. And I'm happy to say, I'm fine in traffic. I did traffic as a young state's attorney. So, I've enjoyed doing traffic again, but I'll be just as comfortable, handling civil proceedings, or if they send me to juvenile courts, or if they send me back to criminal court. I'm not going to be as worried as most people because I've had those experiences already.
My concern too, and maybe you can inform us, we elect our judges.
Yes.
During that process, does the candidate for judge, is there, and I don't know of a platform where they come in and tell you their particular credentials for that office, or is there a need for that? As you mentioned,
there is, and I think they're all over the city. I'm county-wide right now, and I could tell you every day I'm going to at least 2 or 3 different places where I've been invited. Some of them have long-standing history, some are newer, and they're just local organizations that invite judges to come and speak, or local government officials in general. So I would say if you want to know more about your judges and you don't feel like you're getting enough information, whatever organizations you're a part of, you ought to invite some of those judges out to talk to you. You ought to reach out to some of the bar associations because they all have rated everybody who's running for judge just about. And that should be a big red flag to you if somebody's running for judge and they have no bar association ratings. But there are forums out there for people. And again, I think it's a question of access and information. A lot of people are tired by the time they get to the judges part of the ballot, you know, and so people are happier to rush out and hear the folks at the top of the ballot, but aren't necessarily sticking around for the events where it's just judges talking. So we've all got some work to do on both ends, I think there.
You know, I think that with respect to judge appointments, Donald Trump appointed, I think, over 300 judges. And these judges, now, of course, you know, we're talking various positions, but a lot of these judges are changing the landscape of the judicial system. And so it is extremely important that we make ourselves aware. And why we're so glad that you're here to talk to us, because, you know, the information that you're speaking of is important. We need to understand about the rating system and how judges are appointed.
I would just add really quickly, while I was appointed by Judge Joy V. Cunningham to this position, I would not be here without the unanimous vote of the entire Supreme Court. So all of the Supreme Court approved my appointment. And just think about how often does the Supreme Court agree? All of them agree on something. So
congratulations.
I don't just have the support of Justice Cunningham, but of the entire Supreme Court, which is very humbling and honoring to me.
Yes, wonderful. Yes. So there are a couple comments. One individual was speaking about his own particular situation with the justice system, and that essentially he was offered a deal, and that if he didn't take it, that, you know, he was going to end up getting, you know, a lot of time. And so unfortunately, you know, his innocence and his case, you know, went by the wayside because, you know, he just needed to, and I think there was one of the individuals who asked a question about that, you know, in terms of accepting plea bargains. And there was also another.
I could yield to Zarifa's hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I see a hand. I didn't see it because I had the chat open. There's a question out there, Sister Zarifa.
Okay, sorry, my mic was acting up. Hi, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Congratulations on your appointment, Justice Dyer. So
you.
I really enjoyed hearing about your story. That was very inspiring. I thought it was really cool. I actually also just got back from Paris last fall, so I think that's really awesome.
So you know.
Yes, it was quite an experience. So I do have a question. So I'm really excited to be a law student in the fall. So I'm really looking forward to that. What recommendations or advice do you have for, like, I guess similar to Dr. Haish's question, do you have for future Black lawyers or potentially judges who are going to be interacting with the justice system or are interested in that kind of work in the future?
Oh, wonderful question, and very nice to meet you. So I would say one thing, it's important to surround yourself with good mentors. I'm only as good as the people who covered me and ushered me and taught me throughout my law career. One of the best bits of advice I got starting law school, when I said, what should I do to prepare for law school? And they just said, read. It doesn't matter what you read something that you enjoy right now, but law school does involve a lot of reading. So you want to get in the habit and prepare yourself to read a large amount of material each day. And so why not read books you enjoy now? Because the books can be somewhat challenging in law school. I remember on the train once, a kid walked up to me and said, can I borrow your dictionary? And I was like, this is not a dictionary. This is my book. And I have to read all of it, not just one word out of it. So read as much as you can, get some good mentors. Once you get to law school, involve yourself with those bar associations early, because it's much cheaper as a law student. And you make a lot of connections that will be invaluable to you for work. I can say every job I've had as a lawyer, I did not get from just filling out an ad online. It was because I had a connection and I met someone who mentored me and who offered me a job or encouraged me to apply for a job that I might not have known about. So networking and mentorship is vital and critical to having a successful legal career. So call me sometimes.
That's what I was about to ask. Will you be available for her sometime?
Yes, she can call me anytime she'd like.
Very good.
Excellent, excellent. I do have one question, and this is the CCBA, and you were a committee member for, this is the committee member for lawyers in the community, government lawyers, and volunteer for the 2022 interview preparation workshop for law students. And you were the co-chair of the mental health committee. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh gosh, it's been great working with the Cook County Bar Association and all of the bar associations. Really, I'm also a chair, co-chair of the Chicago Bar Association's Wellbeing and Mindfulness Committee, and I really applaud the judiciary and the legal profession in recognizing the importance of well-being and mental health on lawyers too. I think a lot of people take for granted that we as lawyers experience a lot of secondary trauma in servicing victims and hearing their stories and advocating for them. It's just as hard on us sometimes when we don't achieve the result that we were hoping for in court. I remember my very first jury trial that I lost involved in a violation of an order of protection. And I cried right with my victim. I felt, because I was just as invested in her in winning that trial. So it's important that we as lawyers take care of ourselves so that we can be the best possible advocates for our clients. And substance abuse, including alcohol, is a really big problem amongst people in my profession. And so it's been really great to work with a lot of different groups to provide alternatives and options for people to deal with their stress that comes with the everyday work that we do.
Yes, yes. One other question, and I don't want to dominate, but this is another question because both mental health, mindfulness, and this next topic are all very near and dear to me. You were the supervising regional counsel for the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. And as a social worker, I'm just, always very, very mindful and concerned about what's happening with our children, our youth.
Yeah. And I will say as a DCFS counsel, I was not just dealing with abused and neglected minors, but also our wards that had gotten caught up in the criminal side of things and delinquency, which is huge right now. As you see, a lot of our criminal offenders these days are getting younger and younger. And so how we're dealing with a youthful offender is really going to set the stage and lay the track for that child for the rest of their life, right? And so we really need to work and have some dialogue about how we are going to engage young people, sometimes who've done some pretty serious things, some really terrible things. But at such a young age, how can we say that there is no room for redemption or that there's no possible way to correct a situation when we're looking at so much potential and promise? Mm-hmm. And so we really, as a community, need to collectively discuss how we're going to address that, because the current criminal justice system kind of doesn't really have a good fit for that right now, and the problem is getting out of control. We've got some restorative justice courts, which are good and important in our communities, but there also needs to be more programs and support for our young people so that they don't come back into the system on another case. And that's kind of looking outside of the legal system, because in order for the legal system to function properly, there needs to be a lot of support outside of the legal system as well, if it's all going to function properly.
Yes, yes. Yeah,
I have another question, if I may. Actually, two questions. Number one, Judge Dyer, my college roommate went on to law school, And when I saw him later in life, I asked, I said, what was the most important thing in law school you learned? And his answer was, where to find the law. Would you agree with that assessment? Or do you have another?
No, I think 1,000%, because as I stated, the law, all of the Illinois law, I'm just talking about the criminal code is the size of a dictionary. When you stretch it out to all of the Illinois laws, it's volumes and volumes, like encyclopedias that will fill shelves. One person cannot possibly know all of it, although I kind of pride myself on being a little bit of a nerd and knowing a lot of different statutes. I don't know them all, but I'm quite confident that when I have a question, I know where to go to get the information that I need. I know how to, I think it's important for a good lawyer to have proper legal research skills, not only to know which books to look to, but there's a method and a process for reading case law and making sure it's the most recent and up-to-date case. So you don't go to court arguing something that has been overturned or that is no longer good law. And it happens more often than you realize when somebody's not good at what they do. So I think a really good lawyer is a lifelong student of the law, because there's just, the laws are always changing, they're always evolving. And so you have to maintain that zest and excitement for learning new laws. And I think as long as I feel that, I will continue to practice. And I'm, even now with traffic, I'm so excited to kind of revisit it and learn this, see the changes in the law that have come about for DUI since I was a prosecutor on these cases. And I know I kind of stood out, because what you don't know is, so you say a judge that starts in a new area, how do they know what to do? So every different division has what's called the bench book, and you get like sort of this general starter's guide for how to be a judge in that section, right? And the difference between a good judge and a great judge is a good judge will learn that book and work with it. But a great judge, like I hope I plan to be, I looked at that book and it cited some cases. And I said, well, I'd like to see the cases and read the cases. And I want to read the cases that the cases lead to, and not just rely on my understanding of this general summary that somebody's given me. So I think if you meet a lawyer that's enthusiastic about researching the law, that's a good person to follow around.
Thank you for that. And I know our time is short. My second question is, you mentioned that you were voted unanimously on by the Illinois Supreme Court. What other organizations, groups, or institutions have endorsed and support your candidacy?
Well, endorsed and supported my candidacy so far. I can say that my own hometown committeeman in Bremen, our own illustrious Mayor Bernard Alsbury supports me. I believe I have the support of the surrounding local committeemen in Rich and Bloom Township. I also have the support because I'm countywide and I'm seeking endorsements all around. I do have the endorsement and support of Alderman Jason Irvin from the West Side. And I believe I have the support of Larry Rogers Jr. I was asked to meet with Alderman Burnett, so I'm hoping it's all positive, and everybody's been very supportive as I've gone along. But I did just find out 2 days ago, I am being recognized by the Cook County Bar Association. I will be receiving a judicial award next month at their installation awards dinner. So I'm very excited about that.
Excellent, and more endorsements to come. You also are AKA. I know that means a lot to some people.
Yes. I am a proud member, a legacy of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm a member of Theta Omega chapter, and I'm an active member. Most recently, I was on our regional committees because I'm really on this well-being kick. Our regional committee had a morning start committee that worked on sort of exercises and meditations for our group as we began regional meetings. So I was happy to work on that with Sora Juliana Stratton. So that was fun.
Excellent. I have one last question as we are winding down. This question is from Imam Tariq. Has technology made it easier for attorneys and judges to keep up with the changes in the law? Or are there instances where physical research is still much needed?
I didn't hear the first part of it. Were you asking if there's technology is used for the law
Is
versus?
the question, I'm pulling the chat back up. Has technology made it easier for attorneys and judges to keep up with the changes in the law?
Oh,
Or
infinitely more easier. 1,000% more easier. When I started law school, the process of making sure a case was current was called shepherdizing. And you would have to take your case and go to other books and look up in those books, look up your case, and there would be notations about other cases you should go and check. Now you can type it into Westlaw or Lexis, and you can have an instantaneous answer about whether a case is still good law, and an instantaneous answer about what cases were cited. So it's much easier if you're computer literate to do your legal research these days. So the law students that are about to start law school is a lot easier. So count your blessings.
Excellent, excellent. Well, actually, we are now at the conclusion of our presentation. Thank you so very much, the Honorable Deidre M. Dyer, Judge Deidre M. Dyer. Thank you so very much for joining us today, for enlightening us about your journey to the bench, and as well as giving us some insights about, what's going on with the law, and how we all do a better job, right, of making sure that we have great representation.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to talk to everyone this afternoon. I'm looking forward to hearing from the young future lawyer, and I'm happy to come back and talk to you all anytime. There's a lot to unpack with the law. There's a lot of different little sections, and I'm happy to come back and talk in more depth about some subjects that are important to your members. So
excellent. So much success to you, and we hope that this journey continues, right?
Yes. Thank you so much. And I know I'll do well with the support of such wonderful people like you guys behind me. So I hope to earn your support if I don't already have it. And for those of you who already support me, I thank you so much.
Yes. So we will close with just a brief prayer. With the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. We pray, Allah, for the continued covering protection for this community, for the Honorable Judge Dyer, and for all of us who are listening. We pray, Allah, for for all of our well-being. Thank you. Ameen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Good.
And
right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.